Joni Mitchell is one of the towering talents of contemporary music. Should anyone be foolish enough to challenge that point, I appoint them to her new career-spanning 4-disc collection of 53 of her remarkable songs, remastered and reimagined. It's called Love Has Many Faces, a quartet, a ballet, waiting to be danced. Before we start our conversation, first a look at Joni performing Both Sides Now. I had a tribute to her. She wrote that song when she was just 21.
Oh, but now it's just another show, and you leave them laughing when you go. And if you care, don't let them know. Don't give yourself away. Both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow it's love's illusions that I recall. I really don't know love. I really don't know love at all.
Joni, 21. You've been prolific a long time.
Yeah. There's a trumpet player named Ambrose who's kind of new on the jazz scene. And that's what he said to me. He said, Joni, how'd you do it? I said, how did I do what? He said, how did you do it? 21, whatever it was, albums. I said, I don't know. I just, was under contract, I had to deliver. This is some kind of duty.
There are a whole lot of folk under contract who ain't put out the kind of stuff you put out for all these years. You do say in this book, and I want to jump in. Can I just say, first of all, I am so glad. I'm not surprised, knowing you as I do, that you were in charge of this beginning to end, the packaging, everything. We'll talk about that because it's so. I mean, it's a piece of art. I mean, aside from the 53 songs, the way it's presented is a piece of art, which I want to come to in just a second.
Okay.
But I'm so glad you spent so much time in the liner notes. I love reading liner notes. You learn a lot about artists when you read their liner notes. And speaking of being 21 and being so prolific even then, you say that your first husband, Mr. Mitchell, helped make you a philosopher.
If you make a good marriage, God bless you.
Right.
If you make a bad marriage, become a philosopher.
Right.
That's basically.
Yeah.
Anyway, I married. We both married for the wrong reasons. He married, fired his old partner, and put me in the duo, so it became Chuck and Joni Mitchell. And he held the purse strings, right? So I had to be a housewife and bring home the bacon as well as him. It wasn't a good marriage. On our wedding day, even his mother said of him, he was the firstborn, the first waffle should be used to warm up the pan and then thrown out.
Ouch.
On our wedding day, he
Hold
behaved
up.
very badly, very selfishly. He took all the money that was given to us, so we were poor, for starting out, and went out and bought himself a Porsche Speedster and was late for the wedding. So his mother, that we got off to a bad start. But one thing good that came out of it, he was very exploitive, but, he set up a publishing company. When I began to write, it was just inner stuff that I had to work out, or I hadn't really figured out how to do it. It was kind of cryptic in the beginning. I didn't. Both Sides Now, for example, I thought I just skimmed the surface of what I was contemplating. I didn't think it was thorough. I considered it kind of a failure. And then other people started to see something in it. And in its vagueness, it was very interpretable. And I grew into it. Also, it's a funny song for an ingenue. It's not an ingenue song, Singing at 21, what do you know about life? People kind of made fun of it. Dave Van Ronk sang it very well, because he was a young man, but he looked kind of like an old man, like Gabby Hayes, who was playing old man when he was young. He was one of those kind of old young men. And I thought his version of it was very good. Mabel Mercer sang it in her 70s. And I heard her and paid her a compliment. I said, it takes an older woman to bring that song to life. And she went, huh? And I thought, oh dear, you never tell a woman she's old, That's how I found out. I didn't tell her I was the author.
Speaking of people laughing, you said laughing and making fun of you. I don't want to overstate that where this passage is concerned, but I do want to share this thing that I found fascinating.
Okay.
In this wonderful book and collection of CDs. When the album was finished, I played it for Geffen and Bob Dylan and Bob's buddy Louis Kemp, who brought a girl with him. Bob had just completed an album, Planet Waves, not one of his best. We played it first, and everyone was effusive. Then I played Court and Spark. I was so proud of it. My first band, Bob Dylan, pretended to fall asleep when the last note faded out. Geffen nodded feebly. Louis said nothing. As they continued to comment on Bob's work, Louis's girl came and said, "Why are they doing this to you?" "I don't know," I said. "I think I'm Jackie Robinson." So with that collection of people around you, the work wasn't being given the respect in that moment, perhaps, that it should have been given.
Well, then John Lennon's comment, too. Now, that's a working class perspective.
Right.
He's just going, oh, it's too sophisticated, it's twee, you know, like, you know, that's a class problem, right? That's the way I saw it. But I guess I had a kind of a hard way to go, you know. There weren't that many women in the business. You know, I think it's funny. I mean, I'm not whining.
Sure.
You know, but even trying to lead people, because I had very, very distinctive ideas about how the bottom end should be. And I laid my part down and have really good time. So I'd put the bass and drums on afterwards, right? And I just couldn't get anybody until the LA Express that could play it. And Russ Kunkel, who was part of the section that played with the quote-unquote singer-songwriter camp, they couldn't play it. They, you know, as John says in here, I found that quote from him because I was thinking figurative, like an African, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, like a schooled white person, you know. You know, I was throwing in long figures that if you broke them down and analyzed them bar by bar, John says that, you know, you got a bar of 5, 8 or something in there, or even Freeman in Paris was don't ching don't ching don't dang dunka chicka dunka chicka dunka chicka dunka chicka, and the don't you have to keep setting up the bar because I'm changing key in the middle of a song, or you'd have to keep setting up the bar for 2 bars where I change the time signature. So to do it in notation, it was quite eccentric.
You mentioned bass and drums and your own unique way of writing your music. Who was the drummer you fell in love with just because he played?
John Guerin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he's the one that writes in there, like about.
But you just loved the way he played.
Oh.
Yeah.
Everything. I mean, first of all, he could play with me.
Right.
And he rode through those things, like he says. You have to know what those time signatures are.
Right.
You know, you're basically playing in a groove, and then you go into a shuffle, but you go through a transitional thing. I found it very interesting what he said because it's so articulate, you know, from a drummer's point of view.
Right.
What was challenging, and yet for him it was a piece of cake. He wrote out, went, huh, that's quirky, and he just sailed through it like a champ. And I said to Henry, set me up facing the drummer, and he was real cute and flirty too, you know. We just hit it off.
And the rest is history.
I fell in love, yeah.
So you say that this, I want to get right to the project now.
Yeah.
You say, Joni, that this box set is rising like a phoenix from the ashes of 2 dead projects, a ballet and a horrendously ill-conceived box set. Tell me how this project ends up being the result of those 2 failed projects.
Okay, so bad management put me into a bad contract with Rhino. And then I got sick. And behind my back, you know, management trying to keep money coming into their pocket, they sent, you know, I'll just call him the burglar. I don't want to name names or take him out or anything. They sent a burglar into my stash where I keep my outtakes. I don't have a lot of outtakes because, as I explained in the liner notes, I didn't have good deals, and I had to be really budget conscious and economical. So I would trick myself. I'd say, Henry, we're going in to make a demo. And then we'd go in, and if it was a good take, I'd start hearing the backgrounds, and I'd put them on, and we'd take off. So there wasn't a lot of outtakes. And the things that were stored in my safe place, that's what it was called, ironically, a safe place, were there because they were not suitable for release. they needed a lot of work and it wasn't worth it. I eventually re-recorded it and did it right, you know. But the record company, playing the formula, you know, hired a guy who put together a box set of someone else that they had some success with. So they went, oh, he'll do. You know, he burglarized my stash. The idea was a 2-box set of everything, condensed to 2, but peppered with these not suitable for release tracks, or they need a lot of work. He then brought in an engineer who couldn't comprehend my structures, who had terrible attention deficit. You know, I could have done it over the phone because I was a shut-in. I was very ill. I couldn't leave my bedroom, really. But I could do it over the phone with the language of Pro Tools. He used Pro Tools, but he couldn't follow or wouldn't follow my instruction, which has been a problem through my career, trying to get men to do my bidding. You know, I know what I'm doing.
That's why I love you, Joni. That's why I love you. Yeah.
But I know what I'm doing. I just need a good assistant who doesn't have, and I've had many. Henry was delightful.
Yeah.
Jean, my choreographer, delightful. We just worked like champs. We didn't have any of those, you know, dominant. We just both pulling towards excellence as much as possible. So that's what I need, a good technician that will enable me. But these people were, once given the power, were overlording. And it's like putting a private in charge of a general. You know, I'm the general. I know what I'm doing. You know, the guy that was going to do my box set was also going to do it chronological order, which is a terrible idea because chronologically there's been so much controversy about how many stylistic changes I went through, and they liked it better, like young Joni better than old Joni. And old, there's a lot of growth in there, you know, and I lost some fans and picked up some new ones as it went jazzier. And finally on the Mingus it went straight into jazz, but it was even a little too progressive for Charles, who was like a folkie. He was an acoustic man, you know, and he, I thought, oh, I went through this before in the folk world. He didn't like electric instruments, right? Which I did. And I loved Miles's In a Silent Way, and that band in particular, and of course Wayne, my beloved Wayne, you know. And Herbie, you know, I love those guys. So anyway, I called for that session, and it was pretty avant-garde. Sweet Sucker Dance on here was conceptually really quite different approach to working with a singer for jazz. You know.
How did you since we're into this now, how'd you made the point earlier that you didn't want to lay this out chronologically, and you didn't.
No.
All right, I'm glad you didn't. I mean, I hear your point about growth, but how did you figure these 53 tracks? I was amazed by some of the stuff that isn't on here. But how did you figure these 53?
Something's got to be left out. Like I was thinking.
Yeah, of course. You got your
Woman of Heart and Mind would be, first of all, the first thing that I did was a ballet 75 minutes, right? So I tried to get everything I've written by Love down to one disc. You know, imagine how much I'd have to leave out there, right? Distilling it. And I even tested it on groups because usually I don't think about an audience when I write, but here with the ballet I had to think about an audience because our war ballet was a triumph. It was a blockbuster. Men were on the edge of their seats. It was exciting. It was war, you know, like, and it was exciting. It was rude, and it was like, it was rowdy. It was not like a normal ballet. So I thought, oh, okay, are they going to think it's a chick flick? How are we going to get, this is a topic of more interest, usually to women, you know, and take all the things I've written about love and the lack of it, because they're very unorthodox love songs. They're not songs of seduction, you know, they're more the anatomy of the crime. It's more like,
that was nicely put.
One of my boyfriends said that I was an emotional scientist. That's what he said, you know. And Graham's got a picture of me looking at everything with a magnifying glass. But, you know, it's just, why couldn't we love was the question. How do you do it? You know, and the box set, in a couple of places, it states how to do it. And how hard it is. Stay in Touch tells you exactly how to do it. In Corinthians, the love tells you what love and what it isn't, you know. But it's really hard, and you have to have kind of the same thing. You have to make a religion, blind faith. You know, you have to bear the imperfections and keep the harmony like the old wives did that were bound by duty and everything. you know, there's a grace to that, to rising above it, taking if the master, if the head of the Victorian household is a bludgeoning creep, you know, you still, you know, you have to go, yes sir, right?
When you are forced, and I say forced in a loving way, but when you are forced or compelled to have to go through all of this stuff.
I didn't listen to it.
I know you didn't listen to it.
I did it in my head.
In your head, yeah. But when you're
and then I listened to it.
Right. But when you're forced or compelled to go through the process of putting this together,
right.
What's the takeaway for you, from you?
For me, from you.
What's the takeaway for you from what you have done? What do you
think? The main thing was I was like, it sounded completely fresh to me. I hadn't listened to it for many years, and I was delighted by my collaborators. You know, I just really, went, oh my God, how fortunate I was to play with the London Philharmonic, with Herbie, and especially Wayne, who suits my music. He's another art student, you know, so he's a pictorial thinker. Sure. I adore Wayne, and I put as much of him there as I could. I always had a legal restriction because of his contract. I could only put him on a few cuts, or I would have put him on everything. You know, I just adore his playing and what it adds to my music. You know, when I finally found the people that could enhance my music, you know, could join, could put strokes on my painting, so to speak, and make me go, oh my God, that's fantastic.
Speaking of strokes on your painting, tell me about the artwork in this. I mean, as I said earlier at the top of this conversation, this is exactly, it's a piece of art. There are 4 CDs in there with 53 of Joni's good stuff, or music, but the art in here.
Well, this is all pushing for the ballet.
Yeah.
This is Jean and I and a couple of dancers in the dance studios of the Calgary Ballet, you know, in Alberta. Everything in this box set, 2 things I wanted to achieve. One, I wanted to break down by taking it out of chronology into characters, so that 65-year-old Joni is up against 24-year-old Joni, who can hold a note forever and has a 3-octave range, you know, and yet you could see that both of these characters are delivering their text very well, right? The alto and the soprano that can go down into alto. You know, I wanted it to break down a lot of prejudices, but that was the minor part. The main thing was to find the storyline. So Act 1 begins in my youth, although I didn't make music in the 50s. I was a rock and roll dancer then, you know, Lindy Hop, in public dance halls and stuff. So, but the nostalgic pieces. So I started with rock and roll, which is basically Chuck Berry, kids kissing in cars. You know, that was the theme, right, of the 50s. And it was this emancipation from your parents because of the liberty of the machine. But it was also, the car was breaking down the family from the generation before that was the pioneers. They were stuck together on the farm and they all had to pull, right? Now they're urbanized, and Dad's got his car and he goes off to the office, he's got his world. Mom's stuck at home, she's got her world. And when the kids come to be teenagers, up until my generation, a teenager was kind of trivialized. They weren't an adult yet. But suddenly, because of the car, the kids had independence, and so you had people living in a house that didn't know who, that had nothing really in common. The wife with the husband, the children with the parents. And this vague rebellion sprang up that you see in those movies. Like Marlon Brando, they say, what are you rebelling against? What do you got? Right? You know, like, there was just something very wrong. The white picket fence, dream collapse, that gets dealt with in Harry's house. So you go from the happy days of the 50s rock and roll, birth of rock and roll days is the name of Act 1, to the breakdown of the parental dream, you know, into the mercenary, litigious time period that we're in now, like beginning in the 80s, you know, the materialistic, where we went from being citizens. Greed is good, yeah, greed is good, and we were being coerced to be consumers as opposed to citizens.
What my time with you is just about up, and I could talk to you for days and hours. There are a couple things I want to get out though in the time I have left. One is, and we've talked a few times over the years, but I've never asked this question, but this is the right occasion, I think, to ask. What has been your measure of success? I know it's not about the awards, it's not about the accolades or the Grammys, or it may not even be about the sales per se. But what as a songwriter and as an artist, what's been your measure of success of your work?
Oh, well, all the songs on here I consider successful. You know, in the distillation, there's nothing here that I want to fix, you know, or I want to read the line different, or, you know, everybody is playing deliciously. You know, I love this collection. I don't listen to my music, but I would put this on. As a matter of fact, my friend, we've had 3 playback parties, or 2, and we're going to have a 3rd one, where we play the whole thing. It takes 5 hours. We take breaks in between. It creates the nicest mood. Everybody gets up and dances. You know, sometimes people bring in someone who don't know my music, you know.
You referenced earlier in this conversation the 65-year-old Joni and the 21, 24-year-old Joni. And I ask you what this project means to you now as you look back on your work. Let me ask that question in the reverse. What does the Joni then think of the Joni now?
The Joni then would have no idea where, you know, I had jazz in high school. You know, I had Miles Kind of Blue and Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. I knew everything on the Hottest New Sound as yet. You know, so in my 20s, I would never think that I would be playing with Miles's people, you know, that I would. So that's why I guess I'm kind of in awe looking back on it, you know, like to see these collaborators who are my friends. You know, I just hadn't revisited it for a long time. You know, that's what struck me most, other than, you know, trying to get the sequence where the storyline led and the music led beautifully, you know, because I had such a range. I could play in any key. So it's not like a symphony where it's all in one key, but they flow. It all flows. You know, it's not, you know, Joni's weird chords. They always said Joni's weird chords, you know, like I guess I did some things that were innovative in the history of music, in the way I use sus chords.
What they call weird is innovative.
Right.
They just ain't caught up with you yet.
You know, I understood the folkies thought they were weird, but when the jazzers thought they were weird, or even when they got mad, you know, like I thought that was very strange, because they were broad, they were polyphonic, they were wide like jazz chords. Wayne would go, well, what are these chords? These are not piano chords, these are not guitar chords. And then he'd go in and play like a chant. Wayne said, you know, what is it? What is it? But then he just went in and crawled over it like a fly, you know, like amazing.
I'm always honored when it doesn't happen all the time that Joni Mitchell shows up for a rare conversation, and I just pray and hold on for dear life, because I know that there's so much going on in his head and in his heart, and I want to stay out of the way. But it's always my great delight to have you on this program, Joni Mitchell.
I asked to see you.
I know you asked to see me, and that's all I needed to know, that you asked to come back on. Joni Mitchell's new project is called Love Has Many Faces, a quartet, a ballet, waiting to be danced, 4 disc set, 53 songs, and beautiful art all the way through it. And I tried to pick some pieces of her notations. There's a wonderful letter handwritten in the back of the project, wonderful liner notes in the front. If you want to learn more about how this mind works, you'll want to get it and listen to it and read it. Joni, congratulations. I'm honored to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear. That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep the faith.